In July of 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, a woman named Frau Trafia walked out of her house into the street and started dancing. That might not sound particularly alarming. Except she didn't stop, not for hours, not for days. She danced through blistered feet and bleeding soles, through exhaustion and dehydration, barely sleeping, barely eating, completely unable to control her own body. By the end of the first week, 34 people had joined her. By the end of the month, 400. Hi, I'm Professor Paula. Welcome to the Dancing Plague of 1518. One of the strangest, most terrifying, and most completely unexplained events in recorded human history. These were not people celebrating. Contemporary accounts describe faces showing anguish and terror. Men, women, and children alike. None were immune. They were not choosing to dance. They were compelled by something they could not name or resist. Their bodies moving against their own will in an exhausting, unstoppable rhythm. Physicians were called. Their diagnosis? Too much heat in the blood. Their prescribed cure? More dancing! The city authorities cleared a grain market, hired professional musicians, and encouraged the afflicted to keep moving, convinced that burning off the excess heat would eventually bring relief. It did not. People danced until their feet bled through their shoes. Some collapsed and were carried away, only to leap back up and resume. At the peak of the outbreak, contemporary records suggest as many as 15 people per day were dying from heart failure, stroke, and sheer physical exhaustion. It lasted 2 months before mysteriously subsiding on its own.
It would be nice if you subscribe to our channel.
5 centuries of research have produced 2 leading theories, neither fully satisfying. The first is ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye grain and can cause convulsions, hallucinations, and involuntary muscle spasms when consumed. It sounds compelling until you realize that ergot poisoning causes victims to writhe and convulse, not dance in rhythmic patterns for weeks. And it doesn't explain why the affliction spread from person to person like a contagion. The second theory is mass psychogenic illness. Strasbourg in 1518 was a city crushed by famine, disease, and deep religious fear. A population primed for collective breakdown. Under sufficient psychological pressure, the human mind can produce very real physical symptoms without any organic cause. Tremors, convulsions, uncontrollable movement, all documented in cases of mass psychogenic illness throughout history. The fact that the dancing plague eventually stopped when the afflicted were taken to a mountaintop religious shrine suggests the cure, like the cause, may have been largely psychological. But here is the uncomfortable truth. We still don't know. Physician notes, city records, and independent contemporary accounts all confirm it happened. 400 people danced against their will for 2 months in the summer of 1518, and some of them died doing it. It is not legend, it is documented history. And Strasbourg was not alone. Similar outbreaks were recorded across medieval Europe spanning centuries, suggesting that whatever caused it was capable of happening repeatedly, under the right conditions of fear, stress, and collective belief. The dancing plague asks us a deeply unsettling question. If 400 people could lose control of their own bodies for 2 months, not through choice, not through substance, but through something science still cannot fully explain, what does that tell us about the limits of human self-control? The dancers of Strasbourg didn't choose to dance. They couldn't choose to stop. 500 years later, we still can't say why. So it looks like I'll be ending this episode with no answers or explanations, but it certainly is an interesting story. Thanks for joining me to hear about it. Please join me again for my next episode. I'm Professor Paula, and this has been Dumb It Up.